Now releasing all goblins.
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. You'll also be excited to hear that Flipside Gaming is doing a giveaway for Double Masters. If you place an order of $10 or more between July 6th and August 7th, you'll be entered for your chance to win the box. Alternatively, you can send a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to Flipside Gaming to be entered to win as well. It's one entry per person, so good luck and have fun. Today's game is another Jersey Boy special with Trevor playing Zurgo. He keeps Strip Mine, Thalia Heretic Cathar, Boros Signet, Bajuka Bog, Sword of War and Peace, and Arid Mesa. Sean is replaying his Morophon deck, keeping Sacred Foundry, Bayou, Blood Crypt, Windswept Heath, Woolcolor Gisa, Primal Vigor, and Druid's Repository. Matt is playing Multani, keeping 3 Forests, Skyshroud Claim, Summoner's Pact, and Lightning Greaves. Mike is rocking Surrak, keeping a Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Forest, Phio Titan, Vizier of Many Faces, Reality Shift, and Sword of the Anime. Matt wins the die roll and starts us off. Matt plays a Forest. Sean plays a Windswept Heath, taking 1 to find a land as he sacrifices it. Mike plays an Evolving Wilds and cracks it to go and find a land as well. Trevor plays his Arid Mesa, following the trend of sacrificing his first land for turn and passing while searching. Matt plays a Forest and casts his Greaves. Sean plays a tapped Blood Crypt. Mike plays a Command Tower and casts Sword of the Anime. Trevor plays a Rugged Prairie and casts a Boros Signet. Matt plays a Forest and casts Kadama's Reach. Sean plays a tapped Sacred Foundry. Mike plays a Forest and passes. Trevor plays another red-white land, playing out a Clifftop Retreat before casting Thalia. Matt plays a Forest and casts Exploration. He then casts Skyshroud Claim and goes to find 2 forests. Sean plays a Plateau, which comes in tapped because of Thalia, and passes. Mike plays a tapped Reflecting Pool, passing as well. Trevor plays a Strip Mine and casts Swords of War and Peace. He equips it onto Thalia and goes at Matt. She connects for 5 and the sword triggers. Matt loses 4 life for having 4 cards in hand, while Trevor gains 4 life for having 4 cards in his own hand, and he then passes turn. Matt casts Multani, who should come in tapped, but the guys miss it. He equips his commander with the Greaves and passes to Sean. Sean taps 4 for Day of Judgment and wipes the board, rectifying Matt's mistake and passing turn. Mike draws and passes. Trevor plays a tapped Bajuka Bog, exiling Matt's graveyard. Trevor puts to stack an Outpost Siege, but doesn't get to pick a mode as Mike counters it with a Swan Song, and Trevor then passes. Matt plays a Forest and drops Oracle of Moldiah. He gives it the Greaves and reveals his top card. It's not a land, and he passes. Sean casts Sigil of the New Dawn in his main phase before passing to Mike. Mike draws and hits something he can cast. He casts a Hunting Wilds, which lets him go and find 2 forest cards to put to field tapped. He passes while searching. Trevor casts a Chromatic Lantern to give him access to some black mana he's sorely missing. He then plays out Sword of Feast and Famine and hits Mike with the bird. Matt plays a Forest and taps a lot of mana for a big Greensun Zenith. Mike at this point rethinks his usage of Swan Song, but is still pretty happy messing with Trevor. Matt goes to his library and puts out an Avenger's Zendikar, getting 8 Broccoli tokens as it enters. He then reveals his top card, Mana Reflection, and passes. Sean pays 4 mana for Captain Sisay, passing. Mike draws and casts Vizier of Many Faces. It resolves and comes in as a copy of the Avenger, making Mike 6 Broccolis instead. Trevor draws for turn and brings out the big buff boy Zurgo. He gears him up with a Sword of Feast and Famine and goes at Matt, hitting him for 9. This lets Trevor untap his lands and has Matt discard a card. Trevor then casts Balin in a second main phase before passing turn. Matt draws his Mana Reflection and reveals Rampant Growth. He casts Summoner's Pact in his main phase and goes to find a green creature. He reveals Ulvenwald Hydra, putting it to hand. Matt then reveals off the top of his library and plays a land off of it, and then another one. This gives his Broccoli's 2 +1/+1 counters. Matt then drops a Terastodon having tons of mana, and as it enters, he blows up both of Trevor's swords. Matt then moves his Greaves over to the Terastodon and heads to combat. He goes all out at Trevor, and moving to blocks, Trevor puts 1 elephant in front of Terastodon and blocks 2 plant tokens. This means 6 broccoli get through to deal 12 damage, proving that vegetables aren't always good for you, and Matt then passes. Sean draws and plays an island. He activates Sisei to go and find a legendary card, and reveals Michiko Konda. He then casts Living Death, not so much to bring stuff back, but more to serve as a board wipe, with no one except for Trevor getting a creature back, as Thalia enters. Mike draws and casts his copy of Ulvenwald Hydra. He grabs a land and passes. Trevor plays a Combustible Gearhulk, and Mike remembers to tap his Hydra. He has Sean pick the option, and Sean lets him draw 3. Trevor then plays a Nomad Outpost, which comes in tapped, and he hits Matt with Thalia for 3. Matt pays his upkeep cost for the pack trigger and draws for turn. He casts his copy of Ulvenwald Hydra, going to find a land. He puts to field a tapped Yavimaya Hollow, and moves the Greaves over onto his Hydra. He also realizes it should have come in tapped and corrects it. Sean draws and plays a Swamp. He then casts Michiko Konda, who comes in tapped, and passes. Mike untaps and gears the Hydra up with the Sword of the Anime. He swings the Hydra at Sean and goes to grab a land. Sean takes the hit for 9, and because Mike did damage to Sean, Michiko Konda triggers, and Mike decides to just sacrifice a basic he just found. At the end of turn, Trevor casts Enlightened Tutor, and goes to his library, looking for a card until he reveals Inquisitor's Flail, putting it on top. Trevor draws his Flail, and casts Catastrophe, picking the mode to destroy all lands. Mike floats some mana, and Trevor announces he'll then move to combat. Before letting the mana dissipate, Mike exiles the Gearhulk with Reality Shift. This has Trevor manifest his top card, and he moves to combat, hitting Matt again with Thalia. In his second main phase, Trevor then casts Orzhov Signet, passing. Matt draws and passes. Sean draws and hits Mike with Michiko. Mike draws and plays a tap Sulphur Falls. He swings the Hydra at Matt, dealing 3 and finding an island. Trevor draws and plays a Ghost Quarter. He casts the Flail and puts it onto Thalia. He goes at Mike with both creatures, dealing a total of 8 and passing turn. Matt draws and passes. Sean plays a tap Bloodstained Mire, which is rough, and hits Trevor with Michiko Konda. Mike draws and goes at Trevor with the Hydra. He finds a forest and connects for 4. Trevor plays a Temple of Malice, scrying 1. He then goes at Mike again, dealing another 8 and passing. Matt draws and passes. Sean draws and cracks the mire, taking 1. He finds a tap Steam Vents and hits Trevor for 2 with Michiko. Mike untaps and goes at Trevor once more. This time he connects for 5 after finding a basic and shuffling up before passing. Trevor draws and casts Knight of the White Orchid. He goes to grab a land since Mike has more lands than he does, and he puts to field a Plateau. He then goes to combat, hitting Mike again for 8. Matt draws and passes. Sean draws and passes. Mike draws for turn and goes at Trevor with the Hydra. He grabs another basic and hits Trevor for 6. In Mike's second main phase, he casts Blasphemous Act to wipe the board. Trevor draws and plays a Rogue's Passage. This is just enough to let him cast Zurgo again, and he goes to combat, hitting Mike for 7 commander damage. Matt draws and plays a forest. Sean draws and has to discard before passing to Mike. Mike draws, casting Malignus in his main phase, which, if it had haste, could really hurt. Trevor draws and puts the flail onto Zurgo, before giving an unblockable with the Rogue's Passage. He has to attack, and he swings at Mike, dealing 14 and taking him out with commander damage. Trevor then passes. Matt draws and discards. Sean draws and also has to discard. Trevor draws and plays a luxury suite. He swings Zurgo at Matt, who once it connects, takes him out, and with nothing else, Sean realizes he's done for, scooping it up to Trevor. Game review time. So while I do think that some people might say that Mike was too impulsive with that swan song, I do think keeping Trevor off of card draw was the right move. A Voltron deck like Zurgo will certainly suffer when you start removing its equipment, and since Matt got rid of 2 of the swords, Trevor was in a lot of trouble. It's easy to say that Mike should have saved it for the board wipe for lands, but let's face it, he had no idea it was coming. Speaking of mass land destruction, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be upset with Trevor for it, but he actually risked a lot by doing it. Mike was in a very strong position with that Ulvenwald Hydra, and theoretically he could have come back much stronger than Trevor did. Unfortunately for Mike and Sean, there were a few wasted attacks back and forth, and they probably should have been focusing on Trevor, but once things got going, they quickly realized who the real threat was. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.